Welcome to Revenue Mind, a podcast that gives revenue leaders a platform to talk about mental health. I'm personally a big advocate of mental health and hope these insights, stories, and guts to open up, inspire, enlighten, and resonate with you. Now on to the episode. Welcome to Revenue Mind, a podcast where revenue leaders talk about all things mental health. I'm Julie, your host, and with us is Mac. Welcome, Mac.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, what makes you?
Oh, man, I could take the whole recording to answer. I'm trying to think of what makes me besides just like tangible attributes, because I feel like that's such a cop-out answer. People always go, here's what I like and here's what I do, and that's how they define themselves. I don't know what makes me, I think probably workaholic is definitely an attribute I'd put in there, but like in a mostly good way. I've been lucky enough to work on what I've wanted to work on for 10 years. So 4 days out of 5, work doesn't feel like work, which is always an easier hack for being a workaholic. I like making things. That's how I would describe myself. People always ask the question of, why are you a founder? Why take the risk? It's not because I want to be a billionaire. It's not because I want to have my name in news articles. I just like making things, right? Whether it's small things, big things, physical products, software products. I just like making things. Like I was a big Lego builder as a kid. I'm still a fan of Lego. Got the Lego Brontosaurus. That's how I would describe myself about what makes me.
That's awesome. I love that answer. So now on to the questions. The Lego Brontosaurus was next level. Love that campaign. When you're pulling off creative stunts like that, how do you ensure your team feels energized rather than overwhelmed?
Maybe a bad answer, but I actually think that, especially with like early stage startups, if you're not at least operating like a little bit in the overwhelmed category, you're probably not pushing yourself and your team hard enough. I think it's like there's good overwhelmed and which is like a bit of a hard thing to unpack. It's easy for a team to feel energized when the work is fun and the work is creative. And then that bleeds through into like our audience can feel that fun through the campaign, right? If you're asking your team to go work in this spreadsheet 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for a whole quarter, you're going to have a morale and an energized problem on your hands. But when you're finding space for those fun things, I think actually the real challenge is how do you energize the team to now go do the unfun things that you also have to do when you step away from doing the fun campaigns? Uh, I think it's just like when the idea is really good, when your team can feel it, the energy just comes naturally. Like to me, it's a great sign that you're on to something great is when you don't need to like actively think about that problem.
That's awesome. And then how do you motivate your team when they're looking at Tableau?
I think balancing it with fun stuff helps a lot. The number one job as a founder or CEO is to basically keep that storytelling, keep that kind of vision of the North Star and where we're going and give people a reason. There's an article that I reference all the time with questions like this called What I Miss About Working at Stripe. And it's about this person who was early at Stripe. They've now left, they've gone and worked at a couple other startups, and they're trying to reflect on like, why do I miss Stripe? What did the other companies not have for me that Stripe had? And they summed it up as a lot of these other startups had really nice people, really awesome people, but had an LGTM culture, a looks good to me culture. So I think there's an element of like when you're always like the team has to be pushing each other, especially early stage. And I think it's fair. My context coming from I've only ever worked in early stage. So the calculation is very different when it's a big, bad enterprise, boring company with a lot more cog in the wheel type stuff. But if you give people ownership, you give them fun ideas to work on, and you let them own a problem, I've not found the morale to be a major issue. But everyone has their ups and downs, and you got to be aware of that. But the general trend is work on fun stuff, work with good people, solve hard problems, have fun while doing it. The rest will semi figure itself out.
For sure. Yeah, I was at a couple of startups. Now I'm at an agency and I loved it. We were having these 3-hour working sessions. We were working on an ebook that was ungated and it ended up doing really well. I just I thrive off
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Like when it's something that you're either passionate about work wise or personally or both. It's so much fun.
Yeah. It's
So
easy,
what about
right?
that?
If you can wake up in the
Mm.
morning and you're excited for work, a lot of other problems that people talk about trying to solve in the workspace get solved if you can find ways to inject fun into your work. It's honestly a competitive advantage because it bleeds through from your team into the market. It bleeds through on how a salesperson handles themselves on a sales call, how a team talks about themselves on LinkedIn, how marketing campaigns get executed probably 5 times a week. Being like, when you hire a Commsor for whatever insert role that they want, it seems like such a great place, a fun place to work. It's also a competitive advantage when it comes to hiring, right? It's like you just hire better people when you're having fun with your work.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What do you think makes Commsor fun? What about it?
Yeah, it's such a kind of a dumb word. It's like a hard word to define in this context. I think a lot of it comes from the people we work with. I think there's a work hard, play hard, don't take ourselves too seriously mindset that just it's not a thing you can force. It's a classic, like it comes from the top. You have to hire the right people, set that culture. And once the ship's in that direction, it feels like it's like Newton's laws of motion. Once it's in one moving in one direction, like law of momentum will keep it roughly moving in that direction. I think a lot of it also, like, this is like that Stripe article I referenced, where it's fun isn't a thing that just happens because you're having fun. I think so many people and so many companies, when they think about fun, they think about it as an add-on, right? Oh, our team worked really hard. Let's do a pizza party for them. No, fun is not an add-on. It has to be embedded in the work that you're doing in the day to day. It can't be an afterthought. Otherwise, it's always going to be this like separate thing of here's the work that everyone hates and here's the fun that we're adding on to try to keep morale high. It's like the more you can overlap that Venn diagram, the easier it gets.
I totally agree. And like you mentioned, people want fun, especially in ads and campaigns and just whatever you're putting out there, direct mail. There's so much noise out there that I think you have to be different.
Based in real value, right? Like you can have fun all you want and market all you want, but if the product sucks, it's not actually going to help long term. So you have to build a thing people actually want to pay for, and then you can worry about other stuff. But I think a lot of times teams forget about that. So it's a yes and not an either or type conversation.
If you have a crappy product and you do fun marketing, when they go to your landing page and there's no value prop, it's great. You gave me popcorn, but
Yeah.
so pivoting a little bit, hustle culture gets a little hype, but it can also be a little damaging. How do you push your big results without burning people out?
I feel like this is a classic case of neither answer is right or wrong. I think hustle culture gets a bad rap, but if you're an early stage startup, yeah, it's gonna be hard. And if it's not hard, it's probably not gonna succeed, is the honest answer. And anytime people use these examples of like, look, this company doesn't have hustle culture, you're like, yeah, but I had someone bring up like HubSpot does like 4-day work weeks in the summer and this and that. And you're like, yeah, and they hustled for 20 freaking years to get to the point where they can maybe have a system to chill things out a little bit. One of my favorite questions when hiring is trying to like really figure out, or not a question, it's a piece of advice I was taught. If someone is debating between you, an early stage startup, and a bigger company, never hire them. Because if someone's not 100% on board with, yes, I want to work at a startup versus a big company, they probably aren't being honest with themselves about the expectations of what that'll look like. That doesn't mean there's an expectation of like work on weekends, at least from my perspective, there shouldn't be an expectation of work on weekends or overwork. To me, hustle culture means I'm here to get done what needs to get done. And yeah, that might mean some days I got to work 9, 10 hours instead of 8. That might mean, nope, I got to put an hour on Saturday to get this thing done for Monday. It might mean you have crazy days and you have less crazy days. Bad hustle culture is when it's like, you need to work 90 hours because I need you to work 90 hours, right? Like when you're measuring the metric for the sake of the metric, when you're measuring butts and seats, that's when I think hustle culture gets perverted into this fucked up hustle bro bullshit, for lack of a more eloquent term. But at the end of the day, very few startups succeed without some element of hustle. Like that's the very nature of building something new is that you're going to have some form of hustle to break through and make it work.
Yeah, definitely. I knew someone back in New York that was in finance, and they started off in an investment bank, and all of the investment banks, the Goldman Sachs, the Barclays, the JP Morgans,
Yeah.
toxic hustle culture.
Hours just for the sake of working X hours, not
Yeah.
work for
Yep.
the outcome. At the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? It's not about tracking hours. It's not about tracking people's rates. It's about hiring adults, trusting them to get their job done. I always tell people when I hire them that if you say you're going to get something done on Friday and on Thursday you finish it and you want to take a chill day Friday, yeah, take a half day Friday. That's fine. But if on Thursday you realize, oh shit, I got to put an extra hour or two in tonight to get it done on Friday, then you took the ownership of I will get it done Friday. So that's on you. It's not, I expect you to work on Saturdays because we're a startup and therefore you have to work on Saturdays. That's not the way to do it.
And we're all adults
Some
at the
more
end of
than
the day.
others sometimes
Well,
based
yeah,
on my interactions on LinkedIn. We don't have to go into that rabbit hole.
we can, but it might take a while.
We don't want to. We don't need to talk about those people. They're not worth the breath.
That's really funny. Next question. Building a community at a startup is like navigating in the dark. How do you set goals and manage stress without a clear map?
I honestly don't know if I have a good answer for that. I think part of it, the nature of a startup, you're not going to have a clear map. Like any startup who tells you they know exactly what they're going to be working on 6+ months from now, a small startup at least is that's either bullshit or they're lying to themselves. You can only plan so far out, but that's part of what makes a startup able to be a bigger company is the fact that we're not trying to plan a year from now. You want to have your vague plan, your vague goals, but I don't know what feature we're shipping in Q3 next year or Q2. I know vaguely what I want to ship in Q. Microsoft knows what they want to be shipping in Q3. They're already planning the launch announcements, and that's fine. But for us, like our advantage compared to bigger companies is our ability to adapt and iterate and be on the fly. So I think it's more about you need to know if you're heading north or south, right? Because if you have to go north, but you're going south, you're fucked. But you don't need to know like exactly, I'm going to go north this much, turn this degree, go north. You just need to have like your vague sort of North Star direction, I think, at an early stage startup and make sure everybody at the team understands that and they're bought into it. It's like that classic saying of like, hire smart people and get the fuck out of their way. I think the nuance that's missing in that is it should be hire smart people, point them in the right direction, then get the fuck out of their way. Right. I think way too many early stage startups create this like negative hustle detachment issue where it's like, all right, I've hired you to lead marketing. You're a great marketer. Go figure it out. And like on the cert, everyone goes, great, I'm being trusted to lead it. And then 3 months later, it's you're fired. You did a bad job because I wanted you to do this. And you're like, but you never told me you wanted to do this. So you have to set those expectations and align on that direction. But you have to then let people operate within the north +4 degrees, north -6 degrees. Like you're going to figure that out. And you need to trust people to be able to figure that out within their respective areas.
That's a great point. How do you tell people what you want when you hire them?
I would say that's the thing I'm trying to get better at all the time. I think it starts with I have to know what I want before I can tell someone else. I think a lot of founders and early stage managers are not honest with themselves about what they want and the realistic expectations and how to get there. I'm always a fan of giving two goals to the team. I think you want to have a stretch goal, right? But you also want to have a goal that people can feel like we achieved something. If you're constantly only stretching and your old team's only hitting 75% of your goals, it's going to burn people out. So a lot of it is I try to balance, hey, we want to hit $1 million in new revenue this quarter, but also we're actually aiming for 1.5, right? I used to be the CEO who did the classic, like someone described to me once as the CEO drive-by shootings, where you drop in, you're like, whoa, did you see this thing company X did? That's cool. And people go, oh shit, is Max saying that he wants us to do that too? Oh no. So it's like, no, I'm sharing it's cool. We don't have to do this right now. Like literally today I shared, someone actually commented on LinkedIn with an idea. They're like, oh, Commsor, you should do this. And I just shared it in our channel. I was like, this is a really cool idea. We should do this, but not right now. And that extra little piece is really important because other people go, uh-oh, the CEO says do this. Do I drop the thing I'm already doing? And that's when you end up with these sorts of problems that lead to burnout and hustle culture and misaligned expectations is you just have to take whatever you think clear is and double it and then double it again. And then you're probably maybe being clear enough now.
That's awesome. I totally get that. And are y'all remote?
Yeah. I've worked remote for 14 years now.
Remote work seems like second nature for you. What's your advice for staying sane and productive, especially for people still trying to figure it out?
I think the biggest thing, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, is that forced pandemic remote work is not the same as intentional remote work. And I think, unfortunately, so many people, companies, managers, employees, first impressions of remote work in the last 3 years have been forced remote work. It's a completely different way of working that requires rethinking strategies and structures and systems from the ground up. And if you look at the companies that have done remote work, that's what they've done. They've rethought from the ground up, what does working and succeeding in a remote situation look like compared to an office situation? So very often when a company or a team is failing remote, it's probably because they have not been intentional about defining what remote work is for them and what it isn't. Set clear expectations, hire smart people, give them the right direction, treat them like adults, trust them to get the job done. I think a lot of people are like, how do you expect to build bonds and socialize and whatnot? I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made in our work careers is expecting our social life to be tied to our work life. And yes, I'm not saying you can't be friends or shouldn't be friends with people at work, but to me, remote work opens up a whole world of you can do stuff outside of work, right? You can take that hour in the middle of the day. And once again, it comes back to my get things done by Friday analogy of as long as you get stuff done, I don't care. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. I've been remote since March 7th was the last flight coming back from a trip to LaGuardia before the world shut down, March 15th.
Yep. So you were forced remote versus intentional remote.
But it's really opened up. I always say this, not on podcasts, but just in general. The silver lining. There was a silver lining for COVID. Millions of people died, obviously, but if there was a silver lining, I think it completely changed the way that we view work.
Yeah, I think once that genie was out of the bottle, companies are trying to do the RTO as much as they can. It doesn't mean that in-person work has a time and a place. And I think it's not is remote better or is in office better. I think it's more about is in office or is remote better for me. For me, I know that remote is better. So I have built and designed a team and a company around that. I need to only be intentional about hiring people where remote is better for them or good for them. There are some people where the office is better for them. And the only way that I can fuck it up is by misleading someone and hiring someone who actually shouldn't be working remote. Like they both work. There's a time and a place for either of them, but it's the trying to force a square peg into a round hole situation where you end up with mistakes. So if you want to start a company and be in person, do that. But do not hire someone who wants to be remote because you're setting yourself up for failure and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely. So back to your conquer the world plan. Growing fast can bring on severe imposter syndrome. How have you dealt with that? And what would you say to someone stuck in it right now?
I would say I haven't dealt with it. I think it's just a thing. You just got to power through it. I think as time goes on, it only impacts me more, not less. In a weird way, it's a sign that I'm doing things right. Once again, it comes back to like that hustle culture, that feeling overwhelmed. If you're not feeling a little bit overwhelmed, if you're not hustling a little bit, you're probably not pushing yourself enough. If I wanted to live a simpler life and not have those things, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I know me and that I thrive at the best where I'm at like 20%. Not like I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I'm a little bit too stressed. I'm a little bit feeling imposter syndrome. That's like the zone that I thrive in. And I know that about myself. I think it's more about learning to just accept it and deal with it rather than trying to learn how to get rid of it. At least for me, that's what works for me. Once again, what works for everyone is different. You have to just learn about yourself and listen to yourself and figure out what you want. And I think be honest with yourself what you want. A lot of people are classic with social media, right? We read about other people's successes and we fall into this trap like, I want that. But if you really pause and you really think, is that what you want? 9 times out of 10, the answer is probably not that it makes it any easier. Imposter syndrome sucks, but it comes in waves. Some days I'm like, what the fuck? Who let me be in charge of this company? What am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. Other days I'm like, I'm a genius. This is perfect. This is working so well. I'm on top of the world. And then the next day it's like back to the bottom. You're like, son of a bitch, why am I here? So it just happens. I know it's cheesy, but Mike Tyson quote, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you get up and keep going. Shit's gonna happen. You're gonna have imposter syndrome. You're gonna have depression. You're gonna have good days. You're gonna have bad days. Anybody who tells you otherwise is full of shit, right? I don't believe people when they tell me they have solved imposter syndrome. That person's either not pushing themselves or is full of bullshit, basically, is my stance on it.
No, I love that.
Unless you want to
Yeah.
be an engineer or a
Yeah.
scientist or a lawyer or something, like nothing you learn in school is going to be what you're doing in your career. Like you learn on the job. And like, at the end of the day, like the best employees are the ones who can iterate and adapt and learn and have a desire to learn, not the ones who come in being like, I know everything. I've solved these problems before. I can implement it. Like those people never work out well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's about what it's taught me. So I studied B2B marketing for about 4 years, kind of pieced everything together. So podcasts, blogs, courses, just you name it, I did it. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I think a big part of it, like that 120% that you're talking about, is if you're not pushing yourself, you're not growing and you're not learning. If you're not a little bit stressed out, then you're coasting.
And it's like there's good stress and bad stress, right? I think it's about like really
Yeah.
identifying like what is good stress for you versus bad stress for you. Some people love jumping on airplanes. Great. That's stressful, but it's like fun stressful. So go do more of that. Some people hate that. Great. Don't do that then. And that's why, especially internet and social media, is like other people telling you what to do or what to hustle or what not to hustle. Like only you can make that decision for yourself. No boss, no team member, no influencer can tell you what the right amount of hustle, the right amount of stress, the right amount of imposter syndrome is. You just gotta go figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. How I got to $1 million solopreneurship, and these were all the steps, and it's like super high level, super basic, not tactical.
Yep. And it's
Yep.
always like humans do this too. Like we always, when we look back, we always underestimate outside impact and overestimate our own impact on things, right? None of those steps is like, get lucky that my first customer happened to be this awesome person who gave me a case study that opened 50 more doors, right? It's like a lot of it is timing and luck. Years ago, someone said that succeeding at a startup is like winning the lottery. But to win the lottery, you have to buy a ticket. And buying a ticket is the hard work. Hard work does not guarantee success. There is a huge amount of luck and timing involved. But if you don't buy the ticket, if you don't put the work in, your chances are zero.
I love that. I might steal that analogy.
I stole it from someone else. I can't tell you not to. It's free. It's out there. It's free for the world now.
So, pivoting a little bit, a lot of workplace mental health initiatives feel a little surface level. What do you think companies need to do differently to address burnout and stress?
I think it goes back to my analogy of like adding fun, right? You don't decrease burnout by adding a pizza party or adding a happy hour on top of something you're already doing. To me, culture, stress, these sorts of things, they're not things that you bolt on. You have to change the way you approach work rather than change what you add on top of it. And that doesn't mean you can't do those fun add-ons, right? There will be weeks where you just like me and my engineering team, we spent 3 weeks in person in Prague last month, just full startup mode, like working 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 6 days a week, just hardcore startup mode, right? Would I want to do that for a year? No, that's insane. That would probably kill us. Is there a time and a place for that? Yeah. Can I reward them with extra stuff on top of it to make up for that extra stuff they put in? Absolutely. But you can't expect to always push people too much and then add stuff on top and expect that to solve it. You can have those moments of sprinting, but it's like the classic cheesy saying of like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So the only way to solve burnout and stress is to figure out what is the healthy pace for your team to run at, right? Maybe your team's a 4 hour marathon team. Cool. You got to build and operationalize around that. Doesn't mean you can't have little sprints of running at a 2 hour pace during your 4 hour marathon, but you have to figure out what is that healthy baseline that your team can sustain and then be strategic about if and when you do push for sprints beyond that baseline.
Yeah, how far can you go?
And then also it's about like being focused. I think a lot of times it's like teams feel like they're doing too much because they're doing a lot of shit they don't need to be doing. So it's okay, instead of sprinting on 3 things, can you just like really sprint on one thing? I don't know about you, but I've never seen a person who can sprint two directions at once. I don't think I can split my body and go north and south at once, but I can certainly sprint for a short while going one direction.
That's a very interesting visual.
Yeah,
Letting
just like
your body
two mini Macs going different directions. I don't know a person that could do that as far as I know.
that might be a few hundred years from now at this point.
We'll see where evolution takes us.
That's awesome. So you touched upon this, but you seem to focus a lot on making work fun. How do you create that kind of culture without losing the focus that we just talked about? And what impact have you seen on your team?
I think part of it stems from I want to build the kind of company I want to work at. And why would I want to work at a company that's not fun to work at? So it's very much a thing that starts from the top and then works its way down. It's a classic case. If people see me having fun with work and not taking myself too seriously, that'll give them the subconscious okay to do the same themselves, and it permeates out the org, and it just becomes a thing. It's one of those things I always never know how to answer these sort of culture questions because it's not a thing you can write in a document. It's not a thing you can just like, tell your team to do and be like, have more fun. All right, shit. Sorry, Mac. We'll have more fun. It comes from how you show up to work. And then it's like you have to, what's the word I'm looking for? You have to lead by example. You have to show by doing. It's way too many companies and way too many leaders do as I say, not as I do. If I tell my team to have fun with work and then I'm always being the not fun person at work, I'm going to do it. They're gonna consciously or not map to what I do. I love this analogy from the community world of imagine you walk into a house for a party. You walk in, everyone's going, fuck this and fuck that and fuck. You're like, either you're gonna say, cool, you're gonna walk in and go, awesome, fuck this, fuck that, or you're gonna go, whoa, not my kind of party, and you're gonna walk out. It's like the way people are acting when you walk into a party, a team, a situation, you're either gonna adapt to act that way or you're gonna leave. Great. I'd feel comfortable swearing here. Or you're gonna, whoa, that's not my kind of company, not my kind of party, and you're not gonna be there. And it's like a very, maybe dumb, surface, childish example, but existing behavior almost always beats out new behavior.
Definitely. And I think it's an interesting analogy because when we're kids and we watch what our parents do, kids
Yeah.
are very perceptive. So if they tell you one thing, but they're doing another, it's a disconnect that doesn't work.
Yeah. So you have to lead by example. That's the only way to do it. If you want people to have more fun yourself, if you want people to work harder yourself, right? People are gonna subconsciously adapt to what the person next to them is doing, right? If the person next to me, virtually or physically, signs off at Slack at 3 p.m. every day, subconsciously, I'm gonna be like, why am I staying till 5 p.m. every day? Right? You have to be the example and set the example of what you want your team to be.
That actually brings me to my next question. So the move toward more respectful marketing is refreshing. How do you think that shift affects not just the business, but also the mental health of your team?
It's a good question. No, it's like the kind of people buy from people at the end of the day, right? So even if logo X buys your product, it's never actually logo X. It's person or team at logo X bought your product. So at the end of the day, like all marketing should always have been people first. And I think a lot of companies just lost sight of that and B2B moved away from that. As far as it impacts the team, I think it helps making things fun. It makes things just more, I don't know, it's easier for empathy to exist when things are done in a people fit first way. It's easier to understand your buyer and your market. It's easier for your team to make connections with them. And it's just like, I don't know, like humans are social creatures. I like working remote because I'm like, I don't want to be surrounded by other people talking loudly. That's my fucking nightmare. I hate that shit. Like the sound of an office makes me want to jump out of a window. But at the same time, like we're still social creatures, right? And we still want to connect on a personal level, on a human level. As much as people talk about, oh, it's so dumb being like the how's the weather day on the beginning of a sales call. Like, yeah, there's better ways to connect, but like how often do you find yourself starting a call and you don't start with some little side conversation? It's almost impossible because we are naturally people first people. So why should our businesses not be people first businesses?
I think Mark and Nick from TAC do a great job at that.
Their whole model around people first is great.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I read a few months ago Nearbound. That was really interesting.
Yeah, it's like near bound, people first, our whole concept of go to network. They're all very similar core principles they're based on, slightly different, maybe like perspectives on the same coin. The internet just made it somehow really easy to stop being people first. And then it got like over the top and now recorrecting back to what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. My gosh, that's such a good point. I think about that all the time. I'm like, we're going back to people. We're going
Yeah.
back to connection. And especially after COVID, everyone wants to connect, whether that's in a community or on LinkedIn. Yeah.
No, no, it's me. It's all me. There is no team. It's just me. I'm just kidding. Don't do
There's,
that. But
I think Commsor, Tech, other companies like that, I think y'all do an amazing job at empowering people to have that sense of connection,
oh,
which is
thank you.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is hard. And it's also, I think it's hard for companies to adopt it because it's a lot harder to measure and it doesn't happen overnight. But it is one of those, my favorite analogy is this people first mindset, it compounds over time, right? It like builds on itself versus like other sales and marketing initiatives. Like if you stop paying for ads, you stop getting results from ads. You stop paying someone to make cold calls, you stop getting results from cold calls. If you build a network and you pull people in around your business, guess what? You take a break for a week, they're still there.
It becomes a living, breathing thing.
Yeah, which also is what makes it harder to measure and understand, which is exactly what a lot of managers hate. So it's an interesting, like, sort of thing to try to balance. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't get rid of the other tactics as well. It's once again, it's a yes and type scenario. But yeah, I think a lot of sales and marketing leaders struggle to wrap their head around these more like fuzzy, indirect channels.
Yeah, it's on MQL.
Like it's like either they buy or they don't. Actually, there's a lot of in between outcomes that happen too, but nobody ever tracks that in the CRM.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to a little bit of work life balance and mental health. Balancing ambition with real work life balance isn't easy. How do you make it work? And how do you help your team do the same?
I don't know if I do, is the honest answer. I'm very well aware that I, one, am my own boss. So there's a different perspective on this than other people are. It's like my expectation of hard work for myself is not exactly the same as a team member because the incentives are different. And I shouldn't expect them to work like I do. I still want to push them and barriers I want to break through and stuff. For me, for work life balance, because I get to work on a thing that I like working on and it's a problem I want to solve, for me, I don't feel like I have to consciously create this work life balance. Like when you have to go out of your way to balance work with life, to me, that's a sign that you're working on something you shouldn't be working on. Which, once again, I realize is easy for me to say when I'm my own boss versus people need to just, sometimes you just need a job and it can't be the job you're passionate about, but it pays the bills. And yeah, you have to balance work and life. But I think everybody should be trying to find the thing that for them unlocks this ability for work and life just to be balanced by the very fact that you're working on the thing you want to work on. Not everyone will find that. Not everyone knows how to find that. Not everybody knows what they're looking for. But whenever I find that work life natural balance getting out of whack, that's usually a sign for me that I'm working on something I shouldn't be working.
Yeah, I love that. Mason Cosby was on the episode and we talked about purpose driven
Yeah.
marketing, it's having a purpose. And it's really tough to find and make money off it.
Yeah. It's like the concept of the overlap of what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, what you can get paid for. I think when you find that moment where you found like something at the intersection of all four of those, it naturally balances itself out. And then you don't have to go and seek work life balance as like an active thing, right? It's like when you find yourself like working for your next vacation, that's usually a sign that you're not working in the thing you're meant to be working in, which once again, I am really well aware that it's not everybody can find that. It's easier said than done. But if you ever get the opportunity to go and find that thing or do that thing, you need to do it. End of story.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Where can we find you?
I'm Mac Reddin pretty much everywhere. I think on LinkedIn, I'm the only person with that name, which is a cool claim to fame of some sort. I'm the guy with the dinosaur in my name, so usually pretty easy to find. If you send me a message, I'll send you a dino fact. It's a fair trade, I promise.
That's awesome. Oh, yeah, I think you sent me one at some point when we first started talking.
For better or for
Thank you.
worse, my thing.
No, it's awesome. Hey, it establishes connection, right?
That it does.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Mind. If you enjoyed what you heard, leaving a review would be super helpful in getting this out into the world. If you're looking for support, you can join our Slack community that focuses on mental health for professionals. Just DM me on LinkedIn, I'll send you the invite. See you next time.